this time, I would like to call the Reverend Bryan Penman from St. Matthew Church in Conshohocken to give us a Forward Together in Faith campaign report.
It's too late.
St. Mark's,
Good morning. So my name is Pastor Bryan Penman. I'm the pastor at St. Mark's Lutheran Church in Conshohocken. You should know that. You should know that. You used to be there. What I've been called to do is give you an update on where our capital campaign as a synod is, the campaign that we call Forward Together in Faith. And I work on that campaign with one of the teams that has been looking at working with congregations to equip them for ministry in the 21st century. So one of the ways to get us kind of into the material and into our theme of still reforming, I thought that we would start with a kind of pop quiz. So I'm wondering if anyone out there knows what this is. Indulgence. What? Well, I'll give you a clue. It's a missional strategy from the medieval times. Right? So this is an indulgence that was used by John Tetzel during the Reformation that kind of kicked off everything that we were doing there. Coincidentally, it's a blank indulgence, so nobody was actually saved by it, except for our entire class in seminary, because this was given to us by none other than the Reverend Dr. Timothy J. Wengert. So if you fast forward a few hundred years, and you go into the 16th and the 17th centuries, one of the strategies to grow the church was something that we called the colonial expansion, where the church tried to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth, thereby subduing and incorporating hundreds and thousands into the church and causing an inordinate amount of harm in the process. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the church grew through a process called the Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening. The Spirit added numbers to the growing church through charismatic preaching and tent revivals, and unchurched people came to hear the good news of God for the first time. Fast forward again into the 20th century, and the church grew through hundreds of immigrants from Europe. The church put out signs that said Lutheran and Presbyterian and Catholic and Methodists, and the hordes of people filled into the pews. By the middle of that century, the church developed programs like Sunday School and Luther League as post-war America fell in love with the idea of church. But now we find ourselves in the 21st century. And how many of our 20th century strategies of church growth are working for us now? In this post-9/11 and globalized world that we find ourselves in, full of nuns and duns, what is it that is drawing people into the church these days? And yes, before the historians in the room like Dr. Crick and Dr. Cray run up here and slander me for a gross abuse of history, suffice to say that the way that we have done church has changed over time. And I don't think that any of us is hearkening back to the way that we used to do church with imperial colonialism and the sale of indulgences. It is no secret that these are challenging times to do church. Or at least we struggle to see church the way we grew up with it. With struggling budgets and struggling resources, some are struggling to do church the way that we used to do it. And it's hard to make the programmatic structures of church of yesteryears a true reality for us. But that does not mean that God is not still moving among us. Amen? And just as the Spirit moved among the people over the centuries, the Spirit is calling us forward in this new age in new ways. You see, I believe that we are standing at a kairos moment in time, one that is marked by the power of God to call us forward into a future that is defined by grace and empowered with new ways of connecting to be church. Which is why our synod, the Southeast Pennsylvania Synod, committed to a campaign to raise funds, not to build institutional structures, but to equip and empower congregations for the mission and ministry of this new landscape of the 21st century. Our campaign is called Forward Together in Faith. And I believe that God is indeed calling us forward into a new century and calling us forward together in new ways. For we are being called to network resources across vast networks of people and places. We are being called to be innovators with new ministries that take the gospel to the needs of the world. We are being called to communicate the gospel over and around the world over mediums like social media and the internet. And we are being called to equip a new generation of saints to share God's grace in a world that needs to experience the goodness of God's grace. So I want you to hear some updates on how we've been doing that work over the last year with our Forward Together in Faith campaign, so that you can see how the Southeast Pennsylvania Synod is beginning the work of equipping the church for ministry in the 21st century. So last year at our Synod Assembly, to kick off the work of this campaign, we gave away some free resources, free, that for which you do not pay, to equip congregations to begin the engagement process with the campaign. For one of our giveaways was a free communications audit to help congregations communicate the gospel in new ways. And what exactly is a communications audit? Well, I'll let you tell the winners of this recipient, Faith Lutheran, tell you a little bit about that.
We were excited. Our delegate to Synod Assembly last year actually has a master's degree in communication. And she said, you've got to enter this raffle for the communications audit. Do you know how much a communications audit would cost? We don't have that kind of money here at Faith.
How to get the Faith name out there. You know, I'm reading everything, flipping through the pages, scratching my head, because I had no clue where to even start with that.
The consultant from Kairos was very affirming to us in that at least we were trying. We were stabbing in the dark, we were amateurs at it, but we were trying. We had the Facebook page, we had the website, we were trying to get the message out there.
I pulled up Google and I started Googling all kinds of different things to try to figure out how to get Faith Lutheran's name going. The whole branding thing, I loved it. It helped me out so much with so many more ideas.
And inspire a little bit of curiosity in them. And this is because of what Synod did in helping us with communication. Well, one thing that's changed already that is really exciting is we're able to get our events out there. We did a thing for the kids at Easter time, and we just asked, put it on your social media. Tell your friends.
But somebody put up the breakfast with the Easter Bunny, and as many times as it came up on my Facebook is as many times as I hit share. Anything that comes up to do with the church on my Facebook, I'll share it. There's times I'll post pastor doing his sermon. Just random things, like trying to let people see that this is not your everyday church, but it is still church.
We expected a large crowd. We did not expect the crowd that we got that came here. We had kids coming out of the woodwork, and that was exciting. It was through sharing social media. And it's simple, it's not painful. It's an easy way to say, I love my church and you can come check it out.
New sign. That's a new sign.
Yeah. So congratulations to Faith Lutheran, equipping congregations to get the word out there and communicate the amazing things that congregations are doing to transform their communities with the good news of God. It's one of the ways that we are partnering with congregations to strengthen ministries in the landscape. Another one of our giveaways from last year was for an innovation grant for a congregation to try a ministry that they wanted to get off the ground that was new and different. And the winner of that program was Christ the King Church, Deaf Church, and they were inspired by Pastor Ben Cray, who has been doing a lot of work with refugees over at Prince of Peace. And the innovative grant that and program that they wanted to do was to care for their neighbors and work with resettling refugees. And resettling a very specific kind of refugee, refugees who also are deaf and hard of hearing. And so they gathered together to teach ASL to refugees and offer classes that people connected with so that refugees would come and learn American Sign Language. So what an innovative way for them to look at their gifts and their abilities and share God's love with our refugee neighbors. And so today, I actually have the honor, I have your check to present to you guys. So here is your grant money here to continue to do that work. So let's give them a hand. There we go. So we all thank you for your work, and we look forward to the way we continue to work together. Finally, over the last year, this has been the work that I've been most involved with the Forward Together in Faith campaign, has been working with congregations to equip them for ministry through a process of discernment and discovery of congregational energy and interests. The Synod, over the last year, has worked with over 25 different congregations by engaging them in a process to take a survey of congregational interests. Now, I'll be honest, over the last year, we've learned a few things about how our congregations work and how they don't work. And we've had to make some adjustments because we got some things wrong, like we thought we could group congregations together by similar interests. But we found that to be difficult in not producing the engagements that we thought it was going to. So we made some adjustments to the process. We made it more customized and developed new resources. One of these new resources is the Mission Assessment Profile, or MAP for short. It's an online survey of congregational interests and priorities that we use to help align energy in the congregations with priorities identified by the members of the congregation. At the end of the survey process, it gives you a good idea of what the people in the congregation feel are the priorities that a congregation should look at, and what the people of the congregation are excited about doing. As part of this new process, we have also developed and learned that helping congregations navigate this process of discovery could be very helpful. So we developed a process to partner with congregations to guide them through the process of self-discernment with their very own personal guide that we call a navigator. The navigator is there to guide a congregation and walk through the survey process with them. The navigator helps them discover the landscape of ministry that the congregation finds themselves in and begins to align resources specific to their ministry needs and develop a missional plan for each congregation to work on. One of the congregations that is in the middle of this survey process is University Lutheran Church of the Incarnation, one of our urban congregations and a campus ministry site for our very own Southeast Pennsylvania Synod. So check out the way that the MAP survey has had an impact on their ministry.
So University Lutheran Church is the campus ministry setting for the Southeast Pennsylvania Synod, and we were invited to complete the mission assessment profile.
Well, I would say as a congregation we have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas. Ideas kind of fuel excitement.
We had just called a permanent pastor, and it seemed a good opportunity for us to be able to participate in the mission assessment program. As a congregational council, we've been appreciative of the synod making the opportunity available for us.
Well, shortly after I got invited to kind of be a part of council, then we had a nice retreat and kind of got introduced to the idea of this survey that we'd be taking. And it really seemed like a great opportunity to get some feedback from congregation, especially from college students.
We've all seen the latest and greatest new program to come out, and so I'll say I had a little healthy skepticism approaching it.
We received 110% of our average worship attendance in taking the survey, and so we had phenomenal statistical data they were able to use. The council was able to interpret with the consultant of Kairos and be able to start to put together a mission plan, a strategic plan, and some visions, and start to dream about what we want University Lutheran to look like in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, and in 10 years.
One of the big points that it seemed like it would obviously come up in the survey, and it really did come up with the answers from the congregation, was really being an innovative church, kind of reaching out and actually being relevant in today's culture.
One of the things that came out of the survey is the interest in members of the congregation to engage with other congregations to do joint programs.
One of the things that really, I think, surprised me after hearing the interpretation is that people at University Lutheran are looking to take risks. Over 50% of the people identified that they think some changes need to happen and that they need to happen within the next 6 months.
I think there is an understanding in this congregation that we have to work together to overcome these roadblocks.
We have also switched how we do our council meetings. So instead of business meetings every single month, we now alternate between a council business meeting and a vision mission meeting. So the Synod provides an interpreter and a navigator to walk with us on that journey.
And I'm excited about the work that the members of council is doing because we see ourselves as leaders within this community.
I think if you're willing to take an honest look and are interested in having your congregation develop and understand itself, the MAP process is an excellent way to do it.
To my pastoral colleagues and those who are shepherds in their congregations, I'd say go for it, try it out. It has changed the way that we do church here at University Lutheran, and I'm sure that once they start to see some of the results pour in and conversations start to happen, they're going to be just as surprised and happy as the process as I am.
So I have to brag on you, Lou. Yeah, where are you? There you are. So I have to brag on UniLu a little bit because I get the honor and privilege of being their navigator through this process, and it's been pretty awesome to see how these little steps that they take add up, that over time become the miles ahead that we become. And it's these little steps that we use to discover how the Spirit is moving among the church in the 21st century. So over the next year, we hope to do more of this equipping and partnering with congregations. We want more congregations to engage in this survey process to discover the landscape of the mission field that they find themselves in. We want to fund more innovative ministries, and we want to do more communication audits to help you communicate the gospel with your community. We want to gather more resources to equip congregations to communicate, because we are not going back to selling indulgences as a missional strategy to build the church, all right? Instead, we are being called forward into the 21st century to be networks of resources to help those in need, to be innovators in the way in which we gather as church, to be communicators of God's grace and equippers of the next generation of ambassadors for Christ. And we want you to join us in that new thing that God is doing through us and among us. So to close, I want to leave you with something that one of my mentors told me, Pastor Chip Gunston from the Virginia Synod. He used to say, "Bryan, it is not a great time to do church, but it is a great time to be church." It is a great time to be church, because God is leading us forward together in faith. And we look forward to your partnership with us to be church in the 21st century, as a vast network that is the body of Christ, to be innovators of the Spirit's work among us, to be communicators of grace, and equippers of the saints for the work of ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.